There was always that escape valve in the Constitution and the laws that we have that the government, for the better interest of the community at large, can step in and take those civil liberties away. And we're seeing that happen. So it's a good opportunity for us to reflect, I think, as a country.
Joining me now is criminal defense lawyer and legal analyst Bob Bianchi. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Great to be on the show, Stephanie. Thank you.
And for all of you out there watching, don't forget to like and subscribe. So, Bob, there's a lot to unpack here today when it comes to the coronavirus. But as you know, as the coronavirus continues to spread, governments across the globe, including the United States, are implementing tougher measures to contain the virus. We're seeing a lot of change that's going to affect the way that we live our lives right now, temporarily, we hope. And, you know, we're seeing this impact when it comes to businesses and work and just events and everything else. You know, people have been asked to stay home from work. We've seen the cancellation of sporting events. For example, today I was supposed to go to a hockey game, can't go because they canceled not only this game, but the games for the rest of the season. And, you know, a lot of Americans have been quarantined on ships. We saw the Diamond Princess ship scandal and everything that happened there. I mean, it's quite a mess, which leaves you wondering, what are your rights when it comes to the coronavirus?
Well, Stephanie, I think as most viewers could understand, your rights are very limited, especially when you're dealing with a pandemic, something that could literally wipe out significant portions of populations around the world. And those are the instances where our civil rights take a back seat. This country, nobody has greater civil rights than we have in the United States, but it takes a back seat when the health, safety, and welfare is profoundly affected like this is, and government is allowed to step in and limit those civil rights in order to protect the community at large.
So there's been a lot of conversation about self-quarantine and actual quarantine. And the question is, can you be forced into quarantine?
Yeah, you can be forced. There's both federal laws and most states have state laws that will allow heavy ability of government officials to force compliance with regard to self-quarantining. And, you know, I'll also point out another thing. We're talking about the lawsuits that can emanate out of this. Not only can the government tell you to do it, but for those individuals who do not follow those guidelines, they can not only be charged potentially with crimes in some jurisdictions with regard to failure to do that, but also you can be liable civilly if it is argued that you had the coronavirus and you passed it on to somebody else because you did not follow the quarantine rules.
So is it true that you could face jail time if you break a coronavirus quarantine?
The state laws are very disparate here. Some have fines, some have jail, some have both jail and fines. So I think that this is going to be a lesson going forward where they're going to come up with best practices state by state so that there's a uniform way of doing it. But if you're going to violate the quarantine rule, number one, you could be, if federal officials are telling you to quarantine, you could be in violation of federal law, which would entail a potential jail sentence. As far as the state laws, well, if you want to break the quarantine, I guess call your lawyer to make sure that your laws in that state don't require a prison sentence, but certainly at a minimum, all states have fines associated with it.
Wait, did you say that you could actually get in trouble? Okay, so if you have coronavirus and you knowingly expose other people to it, you're saying that you could be punished for that?
Yeah, and you know, I think that if you break the quarantine rules or if you know that you're infected, you're going to see a plethora of lawsuits that are going to say that person knew or should have known, and as a result of them having contact with me, I got it, my grandfather got it, my baby got it. There's going to be all sorts of issues like that, and this is kind of like the dilemma businesses are in, or as you indicated today, why you can't go to the hockey game. Today, I had to go to court, and it was packed filled with people, and I have a client whispering in my ear. And I'm thinking to myself, this is really unhealthy. So if the courts didn't close down and people got sick, I think people can make an argument you should have closed down. Now, why do I make that argument? Because look at your situation. You had a hockey game to go to today. Those businesses, that business, the hockey industry said, no more basketball, no more hockey, no more arena sports because of the danger. So why are some doing it and not others? That is going to be the debate that's going to go on for a long time with regard to this.
And what about the cruise ship and the quarantine that happened, the Diamond Princess? There were Americans on board. Originally, I think there were some 10 people that tested positive for the coronavirus, and then that spread. There are people that are very upset who were held on the ship who originally didn't have coronavirus, who now have it.
I think the difficulty with those lawsuits is, number one, the government is the one that's stopping the ship from coming in. The argument is going to have to be for those people who are suing that they did not have sanitary conditions, that they did not have proper medication, proper protocols. We don't know if, in fact, that's true. And Stephanie, the most important thing that I see here right now that's problematic for those lawsuits is how can you prove by a preponderance of the evidence that you would not have gotten the coronavirus had they done something differently? I think it's going to be very difficult lawsuits.
It just sounds like a horrific situation, and it seems like no matter which way you go with it, not everyone's going to be happy. And I'm looking here in this article about this quarantine on that cruise ship. It said the quarantine was not justified, and it violated the individual's rights of the passengers while allowing the virus to literally pick them off one by one. Yeah. This was a quote from Dr. Amit Adalha, who works at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. So what's your reaction to that?
That makes no sense to me. They were not allowed to go in because the government refused to allow them to enter the port. So the ship had no option other than to stay outside of the port. So I don't find that argument holds any sway with me. Plus, from a doctor's point of view, I don't know how you can prove that somebody would otherwise not have had coronavirus or gotten coronavirus or they weren't infected previously. The bottom line here is the government has the ability to say, like President Trump did when he said we're not flying people in from China, to say that we're not allowing a ship of infected people to come in here until we can contain it because we don't want to infect the rest of the population. As a perfectly legitimate governmental way of going about things.
And when it comes to like the standards and health conditions on a ship, like who decides like what's good enough?
Well, that's a very good question. That is going to be the only issue that I see that these passengers are going to have some possible viable lawsuit is that they can show that there are certain standards and those standards were violated, which I just got off a cruise, by the way. Thank God we had no problems. Those cruise ships are pretty squared away with how they go about things and their protocols and their procedures. So it would be striking to me if they didn't follow them. Now, if they didn't follow them and then the lawyer can prove that as a proximate cause or a direct result of them not following some sort of policy or procedure, these people got infected, then you'd have a case. But I think that's going to be very difficult to prove here, Stephanie.
And a lot of people are talking about price gouging. We've seen Lysol selling for $220. I read an article about that. We've seen hand sanitizer flying off the shelves, and the prices have gone through the roof. I thought price gouging was illegal.
Yeah, well, it is, Stephanie. It is illegal. It is a violation of, in Jersey, we know the Attorney General, the New Jersey State Attorney General, has received numerous complaints of price gouging. It is a violation of law. And, come on, guys, they're out there. You're supposed to be helping the public, not taking advantage of them. But unfortunately, when there's an opportunity, we always find somebody else to take advantage of it. And that's what's happening here.
Well, what if somebody, let's say I go buy 200 packages of hand sanitizer and I want to sell that and then, sell it for 20 times higher than it would normally be priced. Is that an issue? I mean, I wouldn't do that, but is that an issue?
That is a really good question that I did not think of, but I don't think that the price gouging laws, at least as I know them, would apply to an individual as opposed to a business, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, and then private businesses. So I've been hearing people complaining about their trips being canceled and wondering if they're going to get a refund. I know that private companies all probably have their own policies in the fine small print. Let's say, for example, the airlines. If they cancel the trip on you, a flight on you, are they responsible to reimburse you or at least provide you another trip in the future?
Typically, no. These businesses, as you said, have a lot of fine print, like concert tickets as well as hockey games for yourself and plane tickets that if they cannot go or it would be a danger, those are typically an out for them. But I think that these businesses have shown or demonstrated so far, especially the airlines and the cruise ships, that they are willing to make those refunds. But I have a funny suspicion that you're going to see down the road when things settle a little bit here, Stephanie, that Congress is going to pass some laws with respect to how to handle these particular situations. The bottom line is it's a big hit on business and it's a big hit on the consumer. But I think the consumer is going to take the brunt of the problem there if the business doesn't do the right thing, if you will.
Yeah. And what about work, like work policies? Let's say someone, gets a coronavirus and they can't make it to work for a few weeks because they're very ill. What if they're terminated for that? Would they have a case against their employer?
Yeah, I think that they could have a case with regard to that. And that's where I think the legislative fix is going to come in that I talked to you about before. I think Congress is going to pass a lot of very strong laws with regard to that if they're not there already. I think they're going to make it very specific to this particular situation, that it would be kind of a violation of the laws against discrimination to fire somebody merely because they had the coronavirus. I think a business would be in harm's way, and I would advise them not to do that because they could be facing potential liability.
Universities and tuition. A lot of students are speaking out. Classes are being canceled. We're hearing that some schools are just canceling the semester altogether. What rights does a student have?
I don't think they have a lot of rights. I mean, again, you're between a rock and a hard place here. What's the university supposed to do? If they have classes and they let these kids attend and the kids get sick, then those very same people are going to make an argument, you should not have had classes, you got me sick. So the universities have to use the rule of reason, or all the businesses have to use the rule of reason with regard to protecting people. Now, again, those universities are doing a lot of online courses, and I think that they still would be responsible for making sure they down the road made good on the education piece to it. But they're doing the responsible thing here. So there's never going to be a court of law that's going to knock them down for this. And by the way, there's power in numbers, and so many universities and businesses are doing this that I can't see a court saying all of them were wrong.
Bob, it's truly a mess, as we stated at the beginning of this segment. I mean, we could go on and on. But is there anything else that stands out to you from the legal perspective?
Stephanie, I couldn't help but think back to my constitutional law classes that I had and all the years where we talk about all these profound civil liberties that we have in this country. And I think oftentimes we take for granted. But there was always that escape valve in the Constitution and the laws that we have, that the government, for the better interest of the community at large, can step in and take those civil liberties away. And we're seeing that happen. So it's a good opportunity for us to reflect, I think, as a country about all the great stuff that we have there with all this political rancor and angling that's going on. We're very different from China. Look at how China responds to this. They're an authoritative government. They can go in there and they can just tell people what to do, and they step to it because those people are afraid of those authoritative regimes. But we're a civil rights country. We're a very opinionated, powerful people. So we don't like the idea that government comes in and tells us to do something. But I think the rule of reason, again, says people understand why the government is doing it. So I think it's a really good opportunity for reflection here about the powers of government and how they interact or don't interact with regard to our civil liberties.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Stephanie. Thank you.